Welcome back into another Arrowhead Pride Chiefs training camp report. I am Stephen Serda. Another day of full padded team practice in St. Joe is in the books. Fans showed up, even though it was projected to be hot today, and then a huge storm rolled in, and everything moved inside for the defending Super Bowl champions. But a lot of stuff to get caught up on from today's practice. So we're joined by the leader of Arrowhead Pride, all around charcuterie board enthusiast, Pete Sweeney. Sween, what's going on?
Yes, hello from it almost looks post-apocalyptic St. Joe right now. The rain, we think, has passed by this point, but yeah, it got dicey quickly, and the Chiefs ended up moving indoors for the remainder of probably about 45 minutes or so practice, and so now we're just looking at St. Joe. It just looks like it's been in a big car wash or something like it. But yes, we were able to talk to Dave Tobe after, Harrison Butker, Jawan Taylor, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, and I mentioned we have a lot to get caught up on from today's practice, and specifically the long injury list of players, which we don't want to see this early in camp. Thankfully, they've got all this time before the preseason really gets going. But defensive end Mike Dana was out today. Tight end Jody Fortson was out. Chris Jones still absent. Linebacker Isaiah Moore. Cornerback with Jarius Sneed. Wide receiver Kadarius Toney. Drew Tranquil. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Turk Wharton. None of those guys on the practice field today for the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, and now we do have some potential serious injuries to talk about. And I know we'll get to those, but just as far as the length of the list, if you go back to previous training camps, those first 2 weeks, it can get to be pretty long because, the phrase that you always hear is football shape. And when guys haven't played football for X amount of months, they're not going to be in football shape. And sometimes when you're trying to get there with your body, these bumps and bruises will happen. I talked about potential minor injuries yesterday. Drew Tranquil was already out here today doing some stuff on the side. Same thing with Mike Dana. So those seem like injuries that might take a few days, maybe a week or so, 2 weeks to kind of get these guys back on the field. The ones that seem a little bit more serious are, Jody Fortson. We didn't see him out here today, so we'll have to wait until we get Andy Reid to kind of get some clarity on that one. And then indoors here, Nazeeh Johnson, it looks to have suffered a serious knee injury, and the way that you'll hear it from the podium that Dave Tobe was talking, a little unsure about what his future will hold, but they'll do all the tests and find out what the prognosis is. It's tough for Nazeeh because not only is he important special teams wise for the Chiefs, but he was really coming into his own as cornerback. He earned some starting reps, in practices as we went. These first few days of full team training camp, and now it appears he's going to be sidelined for a little bit here.
Yeah, and it's a bummer for a second-year player who seemed like he was carving out a role for himself in the defense and on the secondary. And then Dave Tobe mentioned when he spoke to us after practice that he is one of his main special teams guys. So it's kind of a twofold thing. If he has to miss some time, hopefully it's not a super serious knee injury, but hopefully we'll get an update on that when we hear from the Chiefs after practice tomorrow.
Yeah, injuries happen, right? And that's why you have a lot of players. And that's why you have a 90-man roster. It's starting to rain again. I don't know if you guys hear that. The rain is starting to pick up once again. But as you're working these 53-man rosters, you try to find ways to get guys that are showing out onto the team. And someone that is way lesser known is a name Kelce. And, if you have one guy go down, you start to figure, okay, well, maybe they can keep another cornerback that you thought was going to be on the practice squad. So we talked about how good this room is in the six that we thought were going to make it, but it does go deeper than that. And I think we've seen some special plays by guys even beyond the top six in camp. So this is a deep Chiefs team. You wish the best for Nazeeh Johnson. We'll, I'm sure, find out more in the coming days.
And I want to circle back to the defensive line. I already mentioned Mike Dana was not at practice today. Still no Chris Jones in St. Joe. And we did get a Danny Shelton signing, but I guess it was on the offensive side of the ball. I'm just curious, what that defensive line's looking like right now with still no Chris Jones and Mike Dana. We talked about I think he's a low-key, very important guy to that defensive line, and I believe he was dealing with a calf injury last season as well, so maybe this is a continuing issue for him. But
I think it'll be important to see, which calf is it. It's the same one as last year, because it did cost him some real time early in the season. He did eventually get through it and played, a big chunk of the year. But that is worth watching. And yes, you mentioned Danny Shelton. I think Andy Reid said, let's put this big body out here and let's him have it be a battering ram, going from one side of the line of scrimmage to the other, and then having the ball carrier follow him. So they're trying to get themselves a new Dontari Poe, and it looks like Danny Shelton could be the answer for that.
Yeah, we all love big guy offensive plays, and Danny Shelton is definitely one of the biggest guys on the team, so I am in favor of him getting some goal line work this season on the offensive side of the ball. I would love to see that. And moving over to the offensive side of the ball, Travis Kelce, obviously this week, big story, took a shot at Taylor Swift, did not work out. Maybe he's still trying to make that happen, but it seems like Travis Kelce has been getting kind of chippy. It's the second time this week he's kind of gotten into a scuffle during practice.
Yeah, I saw Mitch Schwartz mentioning this on Twitter, and I tend to agree with the point. A lot of these guys, after even the whistle or the one-on-one rep or whatever is over, they seem to be grabbing at Travis Kelce, and Travis Kelce, I think, just in general, probably doesn't like when you're grabbing at the football after the play, but especially in like 95 to 105 degree heat, I think it's not making him a very happy training camper. And so you're seeing a little bit of frustration, a little bit of the reaction there. That being said, you can't be punching guys in the helmet. I don't think that's a good habit to get into. If they were wearing a helmet other than the color red, you'd be definitely thrown out of the game for sure, and maybe suspended for one, just depending on how many times you did something like that. So I think Andy Reid will probably nip that area of Kelce's game in the bud. Even in your 11th season, sometimes you need to be reminded that we're all on the same team.
Yeah. It's funny to see the punch. I saw the video today, and it was pretty aggressive. Like, Travis Kelce was not playing around with Jack Cochran. He was just like, no, I'm not having it right now, and immediately took a swing at him.
Yeah, and it did seem like it kind of caught Cochran off guard. He's like, what did I even do? I think that was the body language that I was getting. So, yeah, look, everyone's a little aggravated. It's hot. There's a lot of still training camp left and work to be done. And so it's going to get testy out here. I mean, they're not playing chess. They're playing football. So you kind of get a part of that as well.
Yeah, and you see that in training camp. It's hot. They're tired. Everybody's sore. They're living in dorms. Like they're right. Just frustrated, and everybody knows training camp is long, and they're tired of it probably already. And we still got a long way to go here. But Dave Toub talked about Richie James today and said that right now he's a leader in as the Chiefs punt returner in that room. And mentioned some other guys that they're mixing in there, and Kadarius Toney might still have a role doing that if he comes back healthy at some point. But it sounds like Richie James has solidified at least that role for himself on the team this season.
Yeah, and again, you'll hear Dave Toub gushing a little bit, but looks to me like Deneric Prince is going to be the kick returner and Richie James is going to be the punt returner. Of course, you got to get through camp without injuries. We mentioned all the injuries that the Chiefs have right now. And my question to Dave Toub, was what do you like about Richie James? Because it's a newcomer. It's sometimes wild to see that, the punt returner is going to be somebody that comes via free agency. And he's like, well, he catches the football. Which you think, like anyone that's the punt returner should catch the football. But the Chiefs had a little problem with that last year with Sky Moore and some of the muffs. So I think he's got the first requirement is being the punt returner down. He did it with the New York Giants. He's a speedy guy. I've mentioned at times that he's wearing that number 17, but there are plays in which I think he's moving so fast it kind of reminds you of the old 17 with Cole Hardman now with the New York Jets. And so should these guys stay healthy, I have a very difficult time thinking it'll be anyone else. Again, James, your punt returner, and then Prince, your kick returner.
And last season, I think it wasn't talked about nationally quite as much as it probably was here in Kansas City, where we're watching every single game and every single snap, just how much the Chiefs special teams struggled. And Richie James feels like he is that safe option there who can still be explosive and contribute as the return guy and not as much of a liability as Sky Moore. And I still like that they're trying to work Sky in there and say like, oh, we could still use him in a pinch, but Chiefs fans, I think, are going to be thrilled that Richie James is going to be a little bit of a safer option over Sky Moore returning punts this season.
Yeah, and Dave said, Sky's continue to work on it. I think Nico Remigio is a guy that projects for the practice squad. He really likes his ability to return kicks. You want to have some guys even deeper than the regular roster. And so there are some names up here that I think are still going to be working on it, just in case. You never know when something's going to happen. But I think the starters are set, and they have been set for a while. I mean, Dave Toub has liked these guys as they're working out in organized team activities.
And we heard from wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling after practice as well. And I thought he had some interesting things to say about how he's kind of taking some of the young wide receivers under his wing and trying to teach them and show them. And he specifically mentioned, Justin Ross and Rashee Rice and those guys and how he's trying to help them out. And, we talked about Marquez a little bit earlier in the week and how he's kind of the forgotten guy in that wide receiver room who doesn't get mentioned, but we know he's on the team. We know the role that he's going to have. And I think Chiefs fans should be excited for a guy who showed up big for the Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason last year, but also the leadership role that he is showing so far early in camp for this offense.
Well, he's the elder statesman, and now what's become a really young room. I mean, it's very young, where you have Sky Moore. He's 22. He's teaching 23-year-old Rashee Rice about the offense. And you have, we talked about Kadarius Toney, hopefully working his way back. And you also have Justin Ross now as a golden opportunity, just considering the Toney injury, to, I think, really make this team. And I did think that was the most interesting part of maybe his press conference is he's really leaned into Justin Ross to kind of help him out, because these are both 6'4" receivers, a little bit lanky, right? They do have the same body type. And so there are things that Marquez Valdez-Scantling could, teach, let's say, a Justin Ross that maybe wouldn't work for Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming in, at around 5'9", 5'10". I know they're different positions, but very interesting part of it to me, and for a veteran and someone who's a staple on this team now, and Marquez, to kind of say, I think it's worth it to be helping Justin Ross along. It continues to build the case. It continues to make me look sillier and sillier for saying that there's no way that he would make the team ahead of camp. So.
He's Pete Sweeney. You can follow him on Twitter at PG Sween. If you're listening to us on the podcast, I want to encourage you to stick around. Immediately after the commercial break, we'll hear from special teams coordinator Dave Toub, wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, offensive tackle Jawan Taylor, and kicker Harrison Bucker. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Check out all of our training camp coverage over at arrowheadpride.com. And we will chat with you guys again on Sunday for another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Chiefs Training Camp Report.